What happened in the DNC that made even a bona fide Democratic volunteer abandon Kamala Harris? Well, check this out.
When I first got into politics, I thought that Democrats were the party of the people. And at the DNC this week, I felt like I was in a building with the most elite and out-of-touch people in the entire world. It very much felt like, let's just have a huge party and forget all of our problems because the vibes are brat. When I was there, I didn't feel any connection to real America or the place that I come from, which is the Midwest, Kansas City, Kansas, and Missouri. I didn't feel any connection to the people that I know right now who are struggling to buy their groceries or to pay their rent. The people who want to know what both candidates are going to do to materially affect change in their lives. And when I was there listening to the speeches, I felt myself feeling mad because I didn't hear anything about the economy. Definitely not in Kamala's speech, and not very much in the others as well. Instead, I heard generic platitudes, things like joy and respect and integrity, and what does that even mean? Let's make the military the most lethal in the world? I thought I was part of the anti-war party. I thought I was part of the party that fought for the underdog, that championed working people. When and how did we just become the party of academia and affluence? Because that's what we are right now.
To be perfectly honest with you guys, I'm not even surprised. I mean, nobody should be surprised by what this young lady said. She just woke up. That's what happened. For the first time after joining the Democratic Party, she's using her own brain and she went from woke to awake. You know what I mean? And honestly, who can blame her when the party she supported her whole life basically ejected the candidate who legitimately got the primary votes, Biden. And then they decided on their own to place Kamala Harris at the top of the Democratic ticket. The same Kamala Harris who's largely responsible for the dire situation in San Francisco right now. Just check this out from Fox's Sean Hannity.
And welcome to Hannity. And tonight we begin with a warning for all Americans on the left and right and in the middle. Kamala Harris cannot be trusted. Her only core value is her own personal political gain and ambition. Now, for decades, Kamala has done and said pretty much anything to advance her political career. Now, that includes padding her stats as a prosecutor. She sought these cheap convictions, didn't seem to care about guilt or innocence or the law. Rapper Jamal Truelove, remember, wrongfully convicted of murder, sentenced to 50 years in prison. He said Kamala Harris, who was the San Francisco DA at the time, laughed in his face when the verdict was read. He ultimately won a large settlement over his conviction after it was overturned. Meanwhile, an elderly man named George Gage, he was convicted of sexual assault, but a judge has found Kamala's office withheld important exculpatory evidence that might well prove his innocence. But a new trial was never granted due to a technicality, as Kamala fought to keep Gage behind bars. Why would you ever fight for somebody that has exculpatory evidence to be kept behind bars? She didn't care whether or not he was guilty or innocent. She just wanted to keep her conviction record intact. But once Kamala started to rise through the ranks of California politics, she quickly lost her appetite for throwing people in jail altogether and adopted the soft-on-crime politics you know today. Why? Because of their popularity with California's far-left base, now with the country radical left and that far-left base. She called on the criminal justice system to be fundamentally transformed, ending cash bail, legalizing drugs, expunging the records of thousands of felons, allowing convicts, including those on death row, even the Boston bombers, to vote from prison. She repeatedly vilified law enforcement, calling on public safety. Let's reimagine public safety, fewer police, and demanding that resource officers be removed from schools. Why would you do that? She even compared policing to modern-day lynchings and Jim Crow. I don't make this up. Here she is.
When we say that America has a history of systemic racism, we mean that from slavery, Jim Crow laws, lynchings, and policing, our institutions have done violence to Black Americans. And it has caused Black Americans to be treated as less than human.
We all know full well how this worked out in San Francisco. Crime is rampant, stores are closing, homelessness, open-air drug use, public defecation, urination, pretty much everywhere. Kamala doesn't care because her soft on crime messaging helped her political career in the deep blue radical state of California.
Well, at least people are not getting fooled by her anymore. For one, the co-host of the podcast Rolling in the Deep State, who introduced herself as Evan on another video on TikTok, said on a viral TikTok video that attendees of the convention were the most elite and out-of-touch people in the entire world. Basically, she was waiting for someone, especially Kamala Harris, to talk about the economy and the working people, specifically how they plan to help out the little guy. Instead, she realized that the Democrats have become the party of academia and affluence. That's right, the rich, the wealthy, the ballers. And she noted how instead of fighting corporate power or giving back voices to those communities that have been left behind, well, the DNC had donors and corporations that were literally looking down on the people from above. She also mentioned how instead of getting a sense of understanding of Kamala and her candidacy and what she actually stood for, she ended up leaving and feeling the opposite, more disconnected and alone than ever before. And that's why they declared that she just doesn't think that she can support Kamala Harris for president. She doesn't even know if she can call herself a Democrat anymore. She added that she doesn't know who she's going to be supporting, but she knows it's not going to be Kamala Harris. Now, for me, I applaud this lady and her courage for stepping up. Now, honestly, guys, after the DNC circus, I honestly believe more and more Democrats will be coming forward as well. And I think we're already seeing, aren't we? We are Americans, and yet the Democratic Party is just set its hell bent on dividing us. I mean, just take a look at this recent feud between famous model and former Democrat Adrian Curry and billionaire and Shark Tank investor Mark Cuban. Cuban praised Kamala Harris in a social media post talking about how Kamala Harris is not falling in line with the Democratic Party policies. Kamala Harris is defining her own policies and the Democratic Party is falling in line with her. Mark Cuban says Kamala literally is redefining the party. But Curry replied, "What policies? The only ones that she stated were Trump's." Another ex-user tried clapping back but didn't really answer Curry's question. Instead, they tried belittling her by saying that she will one day grow and mature as a person and ought to seek out trusted journalists for information. But again, Curry doubled down and proved that she knew what she was talking about. She said that she was a lifelong Democrat, and why would she reward the party who betrayed her, betrayed women, and constantly betrayed their voter base by doing selections instead of elections? She also brought up Bernie and RFK Jr. being robbed by a corrupt and bloated machine. The Democratic Party, Adrian said, F them. She also wrote a lengthy post about a series of political revelations that made her disillusioned with the political establishment. Now, let me go ahead and read this for you guys. Straight from Curry's X post. "I was a lifelong Democrat. I will never forget the moment that I saw Obama start to buddy up with globalist warmonger Bush, or when the media started to glowingly talk about Bush. I will never forget when they started pushing extremist views about gender, identity, and kids, and then gaslit people about it. I will never forget their campaign to convince Americans that being morbidly obese is healthy, to trust their paid off experts." Even worse was the backlash that she faced for speaking out about these issues. She said the smear campaign against her for saying these things has been unrelenting. She has stalkers who infiltrate her life. She has people claiming that she's every kind of ist and phobe. Then she hit the nail on the head by saying that it was like leaving a cult. I mean, with supporters like this, you gotta wonder what kind of candidate Kamala Harris really is. You know what I mean, guys? Now, more on that later. Definitely stay tuned, but first, just a quick reminder, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. That way we can grow our channel community with like-minded Americans and allies and keep giving you guys the hard-hitting content like this. Appreciate you guys. Now, on the topic of questionable candidates, former President Donald Trump recently blamed his assassination attempt to a certain extent on rhetoric and denial of security from the Biden-Harris administration. I mean, let's face it, guys, pretty much all of America is still trying to make some sense of the assassination attempt on Donald Trump at Butler, Pennsylvania during the rally this past July, particularly Donald Trump himself. They're still trying to make heads or tails about the would-be assassin Thomas Matthew Crooks, but in a recent interview with Dr. Phil, Donald Trump argued that other than partisan factors that led to the attack as well. Talking about his security detail, he mentioned how President Joe Biden made it very tough for Donald Trump to have the proper number of Secret Service people. Donald Trump said that he just doesn't know whose fault it is. But he has these massive rallies with 50, 60,000 people, and their people are always fighting to get more security, more Secret Service, and Biden knew that we just didn't have enough. And so that's why Donald Trump said that when the assassination attempt happened, he thinks to a certain extent it's Biden's fault and Harris's fault. He talked about how he's the opponent and they were weaponizing the government against him. They brought in the whole DOJ to try and get him. They weren't too interested in the former president's health and safety. Instead, he said that they were making it very difficult to have proper staffing in terms of Secret Service. I mean, the Secret Service has officially gone on record and acknowledged after the assassination attempt that it had denied some requests by Donald Trump's team for additional security. Then, Dr. Phil asked a real question. He said, "I'm not saying that they wanted you to get shot, but do you think it was okay with them if you did?" And according to Donald Trump, he just doesn't know. What he does know is that there's a lot of hatred. He then listed his achievements as president and argued that when you do things like that, the other side that disagrees with that or for whatever reason doesn't want to do it, a lot of hatred is generated. That's when he argued that maybe that bullet is because of their rhetoric. Because according to Donald Trump, it's really nasty rhetoric. Because if they're not attacking Trump, they're busy copying his policies. Am I right, guys? In fact, Republican vice presidential candidate Senator J.D. Vance recently took aim at Vice President Kamala Harris for plagiarizing policies of former President Donald Trump during an event in Michigan. So J.D. Vance commented on how Harris is preparing for the debate with Donald Trump next month. He said that Kamala's advisors are considering adopting all of Donald Trump's policies. He joked that he heard that for her debate in a few weeks, she's going to put on a Navy suit. She's going to wear a long red tie and adopt the slogan, "Make America Great Again." This J.D. Vance remark came just a few weeks after Donald Trump delivered a similar critique during a rally in North Carolina, saying how accusing Harris is waiting on him to release an economic agenda. He said she's waiting for him to announce it so she can copy it. Now, of course, there are long-standing questions about Harris and her policy positions, not to mention her lack of willingness to be interviewed by the press. I mean, okay, fine. She has the CNN interview, but come on, guys. Let's be real. That wasn't live, and she even brought Waltz as a buffer to the thing. Plus, it's CNN, guys. She needs to get in front of the press that would actually challenge her. Kamala Harris began to roll out more policy proposals, like providing $25,000 in down payment assistance to first-time homebuyers. But seriously, guys, quite a few of her ideas on the trail have been remarkably similar to Donald Trump's. For one, there's the whole no taxes on tips idea. This was blatantly stolen from Donald Trump. During an August 11th rally in Nevada, Kamala Harris announced that she would eliminate taxes on tipped wages. But the pledge came almost 2 months exactly after Donald Trump promised the exact same thing at a June 9th event, which was also held in Las Vegas. She also brought up the idea of raising the child tax credit. During an August 11th appearance on CBS's Face the Nation, J.D. Vance proposed boosting the child tax credit to $5,000 per child from the current $2,000. Just 5 days later, on August 17th, Kamala Harris released an economic plan of her own, part of which called for providing a $6,000 tax credit to parents of newborns and bringing back pandemic-era boosts to the child tax credit, a policy that saw some taxpayers able to qualify for as much as $3,600 in credits instead of the typical $2,000. Now, critics have also called out Kamala Harris for flip-flopping on other policy positions and basically taking positions that are pretty much the same as Donald Trump's instead of what she had previously said. I mean, just take a look at her reversal on the position on fracking. Her campaign announced last month that the vice president did not support a ban on the oil extraction technique that enjoys broad support in battleground states like Pennsylvania. But that position was a 180 from her remarks as a primary candidate during a 2019 CNN town hall event where Kamala Harris said there is no question she's in favor of banning fracking. Coincidence? I think not. What we're seeing here, Sean Hannity mentioned in the video earlier. Harris basically saying whatever she thinks would get her the most votes. And that's a very scary thing to consider, especially with the presidential race as tight as it is. So what do you guys think? Should Democratic voters just abandon ship already like the DNC volunteer? Drop a quick yes or no in the comments down below. We're going to pick this up again in a future video. But don't go yet, guys, because I have another video I want to share with you guys. On the topic of the DNC, Jon Stewart just ripped apart the whole party with his takedown on his speakers, basically calling them all hypocrites. Yeah, guys, and this is Jon Stewart, the Democrats we're talking about, guys. Definitely check that one out right after this one. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.